Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, host and head bookologist here at the Get Literate podcast. I'm a book-loving, notebook-hoarding reader and writer on a mission to change lives one book and one notebook at a time. On this podcast, we explore the power of bookology and leading literate lives. We talk all things books and reading and notebooks and writing, mixed in with mindful practices and creativity to create lives we love. You can expect regular weekly episodes focused on 3 books you need to know about on a bookish theme and how to bring those themes to life in our actual lives too. You can also expect author interviews, notebooking inspiration, and topics to help us grow through what we go through and take inspired action to make our lives better. So grab a notebook and your TBR list and let's get literate. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Get Literate podcast, monthly Literate Love edition. Now, I do owe you an apology because I forgot to record our bonus July Literate Love episode. I am an upholder, and if you know Gretchen Rubin's 4 tendencies framework, you know what I'm talking about. But basically, that means that I'm pretty good at meeting both inner and outer expectations, as long as it's on my calendar. I need the calendar to remind me of all the things. And you guessed it, I never jotted down to record the July Literate Love edition on my big master calendar. So I am here with a summer Literate Love edition instead, where I'm going to talk about the reading, writing, learning, and loving that I've done throughout both July and August. And you can bet that I have already created a calendar placeholder for the monthly Literate Love episodes on all the months in the future. So here's something I learned in this process. Number 1, put everything on the calendar. It's just how I work best. But number 2, it's hard to remember a lot more than I thought. Maybe you think this, maybe you don't, but I was thinking it really wouldn't be that hard to think back across the summer of what I was reading and writing and learning rather than just 1 month. I mean, it's only a 2-month span, but it was. I got out my reading log and I browsed the books. I got out my notebook and I browsed the pages, but I used multiple notebooks. And so that was a little trickier than I thought it might be. But thinking back on the things that I was learning, right, those little tidbits of information I'm always seeking out or trying to remember what rabbit hole I went down because I do that often, thinking of all the links I saw that I loved or the memes that I posted to my community that I want others to know about, that was harder to remember than I thought. So I'm excited to share that I am working with Christy Zimmer. And for those of you that are diehard listeners of the podcast, you know that she's been on here twice and she makes the most beautiful, joyful, reflective, printable journal pages I've ever seen. She created a reading rules page to share with my community, which if you haven't seen yet, you can go to alitlife.com and you can find the reading rules download. It's just a really wonderful way to reflect on your reading life. But she has agreed to work with me to create a 1-page printable where I can capture what I've read, what I've written, what I've learned, and what I've loved throughout each month. And then I can tip it right into my notebook. I am so excited for this. And if you're part of my Get Literate Patreon community, then this really beautiful large tip-in could be yours too. It will be my gift to you when you join the community. So stay tuned for more updates on that. But hopefully I won't forget to do this bonus Literate Love episode in the future. And today is the only day that I had to really use my brain and think back on 2 months instead of 1. So here we go. First, let's talk about what I've been reading. Now remember, I am only sharing the books that I have not mentioned on the podcast before. So I read a lot this summer, but I also talked about a lot of books on the podcast. So I want to share with you 4 books that haven't made it on the podcast that I think are worth mentioning. And in fact, some of these will likely make it on the podcast in the future because I loved them so much. The first one is Will on the Inside by Andrew Alopoulos. Now, this is a middle grade novel I think all adults need to read. It's a heartfelt account of one boy's struggle to figure out who he is on the inside as he battles a health condition that changes everything. So, Will is a middle school student. He's starring on a school soccer team, but things start changing. He's tired. His stomach hurts all the time, and he just doesn't feel like himself. After being diagnosed with Crohn's disease, Will attempts to get back into his own life, but everything's changed. He's dealing with side effects from his new medications. He's grappling with the time off he was forced to take from the soccer team when I needed him the most. He's questioning his identity, and he's also trying to decide how to understand some conflicting messages he's receiving from his church, too. There is so much in this book. When things become too much to handle, Will finally ask for help in making sense of it all so he can truly heal. And readers, I know you're going to feel an instant kinship to Will as he navigates his new reality, right? You may not have Crohn's disease, but we all have something that we're dealing with. And for kids who do have Crohn's disease, this is the first book I've seen that has put this condition in a book where the main character is not just struggling, but eventually thriving. So the author has an intimate understanding of Will's condition. He also has Crohn's disease, and that understanding paired with this beautiful writing and his ability to portray characters and situations with just clarity and empathy for all sides of the story, it's commendable. I think this book is for readers who are grappling with a similar health condition or who are questioning who they are on the inside, or who just want to ask tough questions about how the world works. I think it's a must-read book for middle grade readers and adults alike. I think everybody needs to read this. That's Will on the Inside by Andrew Alopoulos. Now, up next is a book that was on my nature bibliotherapy book calendar. I love creating these calendars. And inside my community in August, we were exploring the word nature all month long. And so this book represents one of those books that I knew I had to read, and I'm so glad I did. That's The Seed Keeper by Diane Wilson. This was a heartbreakingly beautiful story that really embraced the themes of growth, identity, family bonds, and the natural connections between us all. In it, we meet Rosalie. She is a Dakota woman torn from all she knew after her father died suddenly. She was thrust into foster care and just literally divorced from her family and her heritage as she tried to fit in and figure out what a future could look like for herself. She ended up marrying a white farmer. She had a son, and she found herself just unexplainably connected to seeds and gardening, something that she remembered as a child but was lost in her time in foster care. Now, this connection that she just leaned into, it ultimately brought her back to her roots, like literally and figuratively, and to herself. It was told in alternating perspectives with dual timelines, which is a combination that I adore as a reader. And it just makes you question things. It makes you question what you thought about the origins of our land that we are all living on, how everything in the natural world is connected, and what our place is in it. And not only that, what our responsibility to it is. It just had so much, and I was so wrapped up into the story and to all of the amazing information about the natural world and how those interconnections play out that I think you will love it too. That's The Seed Keeper by Diane Wilson. Oh, up next. Up next is a powerhouse of a book. And I usually don't start with trigger warnings, but this book needs a few trigger warnings. I am talking about Since She's Been Gone by Sajit Schwartz. Some books have us compulsively turning the pages. Some books pull at our heartstrings. And some books give us some fascinating insight into a world that is completely unlike our own. This book does all three of those things. You as a reader will become instantly and intimately connected to Beatrice. Beatrice is a therapist who is navigating some unexpected life changes that awaken the eating disorder she thought she left behind years ago. Now, the book alternates between past and present, and in doing so, readers come to understand how Beatrice's eating disorder came to have this harrowing hold on her in the present as she navigates shocking new information about her mother's death. I mean, that's a pretty big deal in someone's life, and it triggers her eating disorder, and she's left to deal with it. I was completely surprised at every turn of this book. I did not see the truth coming at the end. I don't think you will either. And yes, while this is a book about eating disorders, it's also a book for readers who love suspense, who love family drama, and who just want to get insight into way people think that might be different than their own. It really is the first novel where the main character has an eating disorder. Kind of shocking, right? Considering how many people on the planet deal with that condition. But it's not just a book about an eating disorder. It's about a character who struggles with an eating disorder, but that there's also a completely other storyline involved in it. And that storyline is completely enthralling. I think this is a must read for anyone who wants or needs insight into the world of eating disorders, or who just wants a truly compelling narrative that they are not going to be able to put down. I did add this book to my Bookology book list of books that explore eating disorders, but it will likely also go on my book list of mystery and intrigue and suspense, because I truly did not see what was coming in this book. I highly recommend it, but unfortunately, you're going to have to wait just a tiny bit. This book isn't coming out until February 6th, 2024. I was lucky enough to get an advanced reader's copy, but I'm telling you about it now so that you can go put it on your TBR, put it on your want to read shelf on Goodreads, or even pre-order it if you can. I think it's that good. I think it's that powerful, and I think it really needs to be out into the world. Now, the last book I want to share is taking a hard right turn from our last book. This is a wonderful summertime read. This is Miss Cecily's Recipes for Exceptional Ladies by Vicki Zimmerman. Now, I may have mentioned this in passing on the podcast before. I know I've mentioned it to my Patreon community because it has been inside the bibliotherapy book calendars of past themes, but I just absolutely adored this book. It had all of the things that I need to check off a box that makes my reader's heart happy. It has relationship themes, friendship themes, found family, new starts, food. It's got all of it. It's about Kate Parker, and Kate finds herself in a very unexpected situation. As her 40th birthday gets closer, her boyfriend wants to slow down and stop the relationship. Her job is on the line, and she's living back home with her mother. Her world is just falling apart. But as it is, Kate starts volunteering at the at the Lauderdale House for Exceptional Ladies, and she meets 97-year-old Cecily Finn. Now, Cecily hands her a steady diet of sharp advice and a unique cookbook to help her get her life back on track. And that's exactly what Kate does. But the best part is that the author shows us Kate's journeys in a way that you just can't help riding along with her. You're going to examine your own relationships, your own choices, your own missteps, and your own possibilities as you read your way through the book. And the thought for food cookbook too, which, oh, how I wish was a real book. This book sounded amazing and literally changed Kate's life. I guarantee that if you are like me and you love those kinds of themes in your reading life, then you are going to love this really feel-good book, Miss Cecily's Recipes for Exceptional Ladies by Vicki Zimmerman. So there are the 4 books that I wanted to bring to you. We've got a wide range of topics and audiences. So hopefully you have found one that has piqued your interest and you can add it to your TBR. Now, if you didn't know already, I list my reviews on my Instagram page. So if you head to Instagram and find me at @finitolit, you'll find reviews of this book. Really easy to access on my Instagram page, but you could always find them on Goodreads too. Now, let's move on to writing. I've got a couple of exciting things that were inside of my writing life this summer. Number 1 was my always constant habit of morning pages. I really have found that morning pages are just a really good way to start the day and to ground me in the good and what I want to happen. It's just something that I think is really cemented as a habit for me. So my morning pages, I got to just about every day of the summer, although maybe not always in the morning. I did always show up to the page. I also did something new in my writing. I started writing some personal essays. I have been exploring, as you know, this concept of restorative reading and restorative writing. Right? It's a particular kind of reading and writing that fuels you, right? We know that there's regular yoga, right? But then there's also restorative yoga. In one yoga, you're working really hard, you're gaining power, you're building muscle. In restorative yoga, you're calming down, you're soothing your nervous system, and you're doing yoga for a completely different purpose. Restorative reading is kind of like that. It's a certain kind of reading done in a certain way in order to bring you more health and wellness and clarity and even creativity. I've really been diving into the idea of what that could look like, as well as what restorative writing could look like. And I was looking for outlets of where I could share it. Yes, I can share it here. Yes, I can share it on my blog, but I'd love to get those ideas out to a wider audience so that I can get some feedback and I can keep learning and growing in this area. So I've written some small personal essays with the hopes of publishing in some online outlets. Now, I will say I have submitted to a couple of outlets and no luck yet, but that's okay. I'm going to keep submitting and keep finding places to submit to. So if you have an online magazine or some sort of online site that you love getting information from, and you think an article on what restorative reading is or what restorative writing is would be a good fit, I would love for you to send me the name of that so that I can pitch this idea to them and hopefully bring those ideas out to a wider world. Now, my third thing I did, this was, I almost just said this was probably the most fun, but my fourth thing was pretty fun too. But I went to a writing workshop at Weowaka, which is this beautiful kind of women's vacation spot in Lake George, New York. And I took a writing workshop with JD Sparrow. Now, JD has been on the podcast before. She is on her 8th book. Her 8th book birthday was just a couple of days ago. She has written Boy on Hold, Boy Released in her YA world, but also The Secret Cure, which I loved, The Muse Next Door, which I loved, and I know I'm going to love her 8th book as well. But she offered a live writing workshop held outside on a beautiful day where we considered quotes from Virginia Woolf's body of work. She passed around these beautiful note cards with quotes on them. We wrote down the ones that seemed to speak to us and give us some sort of message in our body that we needed to hear. And then we wrote. We free wrote outdoors, hearing all the sounds of nature and just relaxing. Then she brought us back together and she encouraged us to take that free write and to turn it into something else. maybe a flash fiction, maybe a poem, maybe a personal essay. And guess what? I actually wrote a poem. I used to love poetry as a kid, and I used to love writing poetry, usually your typical rhyming schemes. But I haven't written poetry in a really long time, and I was shocked at how enjoyable the process was. I took my original free write entry, and then I went in and I highlighted phrases that jumped out at me as being important to the message of what I was capturing. I took those highlights and I simply wrote them on a new page in order from top to bottom, and ended up with this beautiful kind of list poem that I then just massaged and tinkered with a bit, and couldn't believe the end result. This really brief yet powerful poem that really captured my previous 3 pages of free writing. I've never done that before in my notebook, and I'm thinking that that's something I might want to do periodically as an addition, a more creative addition to my morning page work. It was such a wonderful workshop, and yes, she's doing it again next year, and you know that I'll be there. And then finally, the fourth thing that I have done for my writing life was something I have never, ever, ever done before, but I will happily do again. And that is junk journaling. You know, if you listen to the podcast, that Jen Begin was on just a couple of weeks ago talking about joyful junk journaling, what it is, how to do it, why it matters, and how to get started. And she was kind enough to come into my Get Literate Patreon community and help us junk journal live. So we brought all of our materials, and she led us through a session to help us get over our perfectionism and over our fear and just start creating on the page. And I did, and others did too. I made a book themed page that I was pretty happy about. So I started with an O Reader magazine, which is a magazine I love, with beautiful pictures and this nice quality paper. I didn't want to let those magazines go, but I didn't want them to just sit on the shelf either. So I'm turning my old O Reader magazines into beautiful book themed junk journals. And I'm going to keep going. I was just at the library yesterday, and I picked up the Book Page magazines, you know, those kind of flimsy flyers with the newest book your libraries are recommending. And I added that to my stack of materials, and I plan to use that to enhance my junk journal pages. So junk journaling has been a really fun creative outlet. I'm not comfortable with it yet. It is definitely still new for me, and I'm still too worried about the outcome over the process. But I know with some more practice and just jumping in, I find it soothing. I find it fun. It's definitely more creative work than I am used to doing, but I think everybody should give it a try. So that was my writing life: morning pages, personal essays, writing workshop where I actually wrote a poem, and some junk journaling. So now what have I been learning? I've got 3 things to share. And the first one, I can't really share because I'm going to spoil a future episode. But I will tell you that one book that I have read recently sent me down a deep, deep rabbit hole into an historical topic that I didn't know about, and I didn't know that I wanted to. So I'm going to leave it at that, and you're going to have to figure out what that historical topic is by listening to the next couple of episodes of the podcast. But the second thing that really has taken over a lot of my summer is my obsession, along with my youngest son, with crumble cookies. Do you have a crumble cookie near you? The nearest one to us is about 40 minutes away or so. And I am going to admit to you that we go weekly. We go weekly to get these beautiful boxes of gorgeous, giant, very indulgent cookies. And let me tell you, the flavors are amazing. There's Teddy Graham, there's peanut butter patty. Oh, there's one with peanut butter M&Ms and a big old scoop of peanut butter in the middle. There's wedding cake. There's chocolate milk cake. I mean, I'm telling you, these These flavors are amazing. Now, I can't eat the cookie. I am gluten-free. And so I just watch my son eat the cookie, but I do tell you that I eat the frosting. And it's just been a lot of fun. It's been a fun summer ritual to just hop in the car together, drive down to Crumble Cookie, and try these beautiful cookies. I've got pictures of each one of our boxes and actually plan to make it into some sort of memory book of sorts because it's just fun and the cookies themselves look beautiful. But what I've also tried is to recreate a crumble cookie at home. And guess what? I did it. I did it. I recreated the Teddy Graham, the honey Teddy Graham cookie at home, and it got the seal of approval. Nice, big, fat, thick graham cracker cookie with cream cheese frosting swirled on the top, little drizzle of honey, and a teddy bear graham cracker right on the top. I'm telling you, it looked just like one of Crumble's little cookies. And so that is a pretty big summer celebration for me, and one that was just really, really fun to do. Now, on a completely other note, my other son has me learning about a topic that I never thought I'd learn about, and that is all of the interworkings under the hood of his car. He's turning into the kind of kid that wants to know about his car. He wants to figure out how it works. He wants to know how to fix it himself, how to upgrade things himself. I've been learning about mufflers and charge pipes and air filters and all sorts of words I didn't think I would ever understand. And it's been fun. Trying to keep up with his conversation means I actually have to listen and learn so that I'm a fairly good conversational partner. And I think I've kept up pretty well. So between Crumble and car parts, my two boys are keeping me busy in the what I'm learning department. Now, last up, I've got 3 things that I've loved that I want to share with you. The first is a new podcast that I have been binging. And actually, I shouldn't say a new podcast. It's new to me. The podcast itself has been around for a while, but I just discovered it because a friend sent it to me online and said I'd love it. And she was right. And this podcast is called Windowsill Chats with Margot Tantow. It is a podcast about artists and creativity. And so it's for anyone who wants a window into a more creative life. And every week she interviews some sort of creative about their work, about their living, about how they arrive there, and how we can get some of that creativity too. And I've really enjoyed it. I've been binging the backlist for the last couple of weeks. I also have loved a new bookmark that I was gifted in the mail. One of my Get Literate Facebook community members sent me a book she thought I would love, which she was right. It is an epistolary novel, and I can't wait to dive into it. But there was this really adorable bookmark that she sent with it. It's this ribbon that wraps around your book, and then there's kind of like an elastic ponytail holder with a button that secures it so that it could stretch as you use it to mark whatever page of your book you're in, however big your book might be. I probably am not explaining that so that you can understand what it looks like. So you might want to head to my Facebook group, my Get Literate community. It's free for all. And just scroll through and find that bookmark. It was so unique, and I really enjoyed slipping it into the pages of my book. And then finally, my third thing is something small and that we typically don't associate with summer, but since it's the end of August, it's here, and that is pumpkin coffee. I love coffee. I love pumpkin, and I was forcing myself to wait to the beginning of September before I indulged in my pumpkin obsession. And then I changed my mind. So it's the last week of August, and I am already diving into all things pumpkin. I have bought the coffee to grind at home. I've already made my pumpkin muffins, and I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with seeing all the Halloween decorations out yet. I'd rather we just stay with pumpkin, but it does signal to me that fall is coming. And fall happens to be my favorite season here in New York. It's cooler, but not cold. The leaves are changing. It's just a really beautiful time. And seeing pumpkin everywhere is kind of signaling that it's here. Of course, that means back to school is here too, but that's okay too. It's like our second new year that gives us a fresh start. So there you have it. There is my monthly Literate Love summer edition. What I've read, what I was writing, what I was learning, and what I was loving throughout the summer. I would love if you would take a moment and reflect on your own literate life over the course of the month, and then tell me something about it. What did you read? What did you write? What did you learn that maybe I would love to know about so I can bring it into my life too? You can head to elitlife.com and you can leave your comments on the show notes. You can send me a message on social media. I'm at AfinitoLit on all of the platforms. Or you can even leave me a voice message. If you click on the show notes in whatever podcast player you are listening with, you'll be able to find that link and you can send me a private audio message. I'd love for you to do that, to tell me one little highlight from your literate life, or tell me something that you'd like me to talk about on the podcast in the coming fall season. Are you looking for a particular collection of books? Does your notebook need something new to spark a new writing habit? Let me know what it is. And for those that do, whether it's a private message, a comment, or an audiogram, I will put you in the running to win one of my favorite picture books. I won't reveal what that picture book is, but it's beautiful. The illustrations are beautiful, and it gives you a window into someone in history that you might not have known. And it definitely sparks some thinking about what's possible. So I'm going to be a little bit mysterious about that title, but if you share a little bit of your literate life with me, or give me something to think about, send me a request for the podcast in the fall, then you'll automatically be entered in the running to win that hardcover picture book. And might I mention that it's signed too. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to my monthly Literate Love reflection. I hope it sparked something in you, and I can't wait to hear about yours. Thanks for listening, everyone. I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Get Literate podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. Plus, if you want more, you might like to join my Patreon community. There, you'll find additional inspiration for your reading and writing life, like bonus podcast episodes, bibliotherapy book calendars, monthly book clubs, notebooking challenges, live events, giveaways, and much, much more. It's only $5 a month, and you get instant access to all of the previous content too. You can learn more at getliterate.co. And one more thing, if you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish and notebookish community too. Thanks for listening.